Hello folks, my name is Mark, this is Why I Hate the World. How you guys doing? So I saw on the news the other day, yesterday actually, that it seems like there's an attempt to heal everybody after the disastrous election of Donald Trump. Right now there's protests in the streets in New York and Philadelphia and Los Angeles, thousands of people are out there on the border, protesting, they're like borderline riots almost. Because people are pissed, They're a little mad that it didn't go the way that they thought it was, and especially since it appears that Hillary won the popular vote right, by a slim margin, but unfortunately that's not how our electoral system works. But so they're a little angry, and they're angry at seeing someone who holds seemingly the exact opposite values that they hold be elected to the highest office in the land. And so Obama invited Trump to the White House to kind of show him the ropes, I guess, right? And on the news it was like, Obama pledges work, cordial meeting, and Trump says he'll be a president to all Americans and stuff like that. And it seems like, they're trying to heal it, and they're trying to say, okay, it's not the end of the world, Trump is trying to walk back some of the bullshit rhetoric that he's been saying, like some of the racist shit. Right. I think he's doing that now. I think he even really said all that stuff because he thought he wasn't going to get elected, but now he realizes that he actually has to do the job, and he can't be a fucking shitlord. Right. Just so fucking disingenuous. Anyway, so they're saying now that there's on the news, on CNN, on Fox and all that, they're saying that, we need to come together, we need to work together, and we need to give Trump a chance, and we need to give the Republicans a chance. And I think we should do the exact opposite of that. I think that's bullshit. I think, maybe not so much Trump, but definitely the Republicans in Congress and the House and Senate. Those guys don't deserve to be, they don't deserve any respect. They don't deserve us to work together with them at all, I think, yeah, give Trump a chance. Give him a chance to actually show what he's made of, right? But, Mitch McConnell, those guys, fuck those people, all right? No, don't work together with them. You should show them the same level of respect and the same level of cooperation that they've shown the Democrats for the last 8 years, which is zero. See, here's the thing, all right? This, relationships in politics, they're not the same things as personal relationships. It's not like, this is your brother or your co-worker that you need to get along with in order to not, fuck things up, right? Working in the government is like working, when you're a politician, it's like being in a job you can't get fired from until the next job fair rolls around, right? Until the next, job review rolls around, which happens to be the election. So for 4 years, these guys don't have any consequences. They can do whatever they want, right? And that's kind of how they treated, Obama during his 8 years. They basically did everything in their power to obstruct his agenda, right? And that's exactly what they deserve in return. And I remember this, right, because I would have discussions with people about this, over the last 8 years, on bulletin boards and on Reddit and elsewhere. And the response that I got back from people saying, like, because when I said, hey, they're obstructing, they're ruining the country by obstructing, the president and the Democrats, and the response that I would get back is, why should they cooperate? It's in their best interest not to cooperate. That's what I got back from, Republicans, from people who support these guys, right? And you know what? They're right. Why should the Democrats cooperate? What's in it for them? What's in their best interest? Like, what, for the country? Well, the Republican agenda is going to fuck up the country, okay? And I'm sure the Republicans thought that the Democratic agenda would fuck up the country too, and it just so happens that the facts bear out in our, defense, right? At least in my opinion, I don't know. So we should show them the exact same level of cooperation that they gave, which is zero. Right? I mean, I don't know if you guys remember this, the Supreme Court, vacancy is not the only example of Republican obstructionism, During the first the first term, Obama's first term, the Republicans basically filibustered every single bill that came up, and they do it by invoking cloture votes, right? Which, if you don't know what that is, it's invoking a vote to end debate. And if you don't have more than 60, people, then the debate doesn't get ended, right? And if the debate doesn't end, then you can't actually vote on the bill. They did this to something like 500 bills. I mean, the thing is, it's hard to find exact numbers because, it seems like, it's hard to find exact numbers up to the current date. But somewhere in the area of 500, it's fucking ridiculous. And they finally changed the rules in 2013, right, to get around some of that. And now I think you have to actually, you can't just invoke a cloture vote to stall a bill anymore, right? But that's what they did. And so a lot of the reforms and bills that the Democrats wanted to get through just never went through because of that. So things like bank regulations, things like environmental regulations, things like, fucking budgets. That's another thing. See, we didn't have a budget for fucking 6 years, okay? Until 2013, they didn't pass a budget. Okay, so that means the government ran off of emergency supplementals, right? Well, if you don't pass a budget bill, see, the way a budget bill, you can pass laws of things that you want to pay for in the budget, right? Well, if you're only running on emergency supplementals, then you only get just enough money to keep what's currently going afloat. That's another way of obstructing things. It's another way of preventing the Democrats, the ruling party, from instituting their agenda. Just never pass a budget, right? That's why we had those fucking stupid-ass budget fights every 6 months. I don't know if you guys remember that. They close down the government, right? And then they do the sequester. You guys remember the emergency sequester, right? Saying, okay, well, we'll make it really painful later on. That way we'll have to get together and pass a budget. Then when the sequester came, they didn't go for that either. So then everything got cut. Do you remember that shit? Those are the tactics that the Republicans engaged in, right? To fucking basically, stonewall the Democratic agenda. Go to, I think it's congress.org, and you can see all the different bills that got, held back because of cloture votes and just never even came to a vote because of that. And here's the thing, it's not that these bills went up and were defeated, right? It's that they never even had a chance to be voted on, right? Because even though the Democrats had a majority in the Senate, right, they had, more than 50 votes in the Senate, they didn't have the required 60 that it took to stop a cloture vote, right? And it's not just bills that, didn't go through. A lot of federal judges never got appointed, and they used cloture votes to slow them down. So something like, I remember reading, there was a report by Elizabeth Warren where she said during the Reagan administration, all of his federal judges were appointed within 80 days. And during the Obama administration, the vast majority of his federal judges took more than 200 days because of obstruction tactics like this. So what does that mean? That means during that time, those federal judge seats are open, right? There's nobody there, so it slows down the process, it slows down the court system so that you get gridlock going in the court system, right? So that, for example, if someone is suing a corporation because they're dumping their fucking toxic waste into a river somewhere, right? It takes, 3 years because we're waiting, in order to get it into the courts so that a ruling can't get made, so that regulations are going to get passed. See, it's fucking bullshit. It's like another way of obstructing everything, And so it's just very that's what they did. That's what they did for 8 years, right? And in some senses it worked. If that's your agenda, if you're a Republican and you're trying to stop the Democratic agenda, it definitely worked. It worked as far as the Supreme Court nominee thing went. See, that's another thing. That's a fucking travesty of justice right there. And I don't know why the Democrats didn't use that in their advertising this time around, okay? They basically hijacked, the Constitution says the president shall appoint, it doesn't say will maybe appoint or will wait until the next president. It says the president shall appoint a new Supreme Court, you know, whatever, right? And they basically just fucking stopped that. You know, it's ridiculous. So yeah, you know what? Why? Why should we work with them? All right, fuck them. Okay, they don't deserve the respect, right? That they want from us. They, as far as I'm concerned, they can kiss off. And you know, I think Democrats need to get tough. See, that's the difference. Is that Republicans, you know, play to win. All right, they don't care. They play to win. They don't give a shit, you know, about like what happens to people. So that's a problem. Like liberals and Democrats and shit actually care about like the consequences of their actions, right? They actually want, you know, the country to be a nice place to live in, and they understand if the government doesn't work, then the country, you know, suffers. Republicans don't give a shit about that. All they care about is their agenda and money. Okay, and that's why they tend to win when these two, you know, when these two forces butt together. They tend to come out on top because they simply don't care about the consequences of their actions well. So I think we need to get a little bit of that going, and we need to sort of, you know, get tough with them, right? And, you know, show them what happens, right? Show them what happens when you don't get your agenda, you know, instituted. That's what we need to do, right? Because, you know, you don't stop bullies by being nice to them. All right, and that's what they are. That's what these people are for the last 8 years. They've been bullies, okay? They need to be treated the exact same way that they treat us. So, anyway, adios, folks.